So now that we're done with all the melee weapons in New World, let's start to cover some of the ranged options. Today we're going to be talking about the bow and the best PvP build for it. But before we get into that, don't forget to leave a like rating and a comment down below about the type of content you want to see here in the channel. It really helps me out a lot getting feedback from the community. And maybe consider subscribing and even becoming a channel member if you really like the stuff that I'm doing here on YouTube. All right, so now that we got that intro out of the way, as you guys know, go into the game screen. We're going to hit the K button. We're going to go to bow. But before I do that, I kind of actually want to preface this with something, because there are two ranged weapon options in the game, even though these are also like ranged weapons. Like, they're magic and these are like actual ranged weapons. They use ammo. These guys use mana. It's like a different way to play. These are like dex based, even though I think this is dex and int rocking. This one's just base only dex. Basically, what I want to preface this with is that I feel like the bow is a much better mid-range option than the musket, because the musket is basically hit scan. So it's a lot easier to hit targets at really long ranges. You just put them in the center of the dot and you shoot and it hits. Whereas in the bow, there's travel time for the arrow, and there's even perks that like increase the distance that the arrow travels before gravity affects it and stuff like that. So it's a lot harder to hit a bow at long ranges. So I feel like the bow was built for like a mid-range to even close range offensive option, and that'll affect the build itself and also the armor I use. So now that I've prefaced that, let's actually start talking about the build. Let's get into what the three skills that I picked are. So I picked Rain of Arrows, Poison Shot, and Penetrating Shot. You guys might be asking, well, why not Rapid Shot, Splinter Shot if you're going for more like an AoE build that I see you're doing here, and maybe even Evade Shot because you're using, like you said, you're going to be playing more of a mid-range, right? So the reason I didn't go for Evade Shot is because I have a Rapier as a secondary, and that is my mobility. When I see someone getting close at all, and I've already dumped all my arrow, and I'm like, dump all my arrow skills, and I'm ready to like have to fight melee, even if I need to fight melee, I pull out the Rapier, and then if I think I can fight them, I'll fight them. If not, I leave with the barrel roll, basically. So using a skill that I could be using to deal damage to have a disengage, I thought would be useless, because I have the disengage built into my secondary. My secondary weapon is my disengage tool. And the reason I didn't pick up Rapid Shot or Splinter Shot, these two I think are just terrible. Like, I think Splinter Shot is almost like the worst bow skill in the game. It's almost impossible to hit sometimes. And I feel like Rapid Shot, it's a lot harder to hit all three arrows. So I decided, well, Penetrating Shot, I can actually take my time and line up a shot easier and actually guarantee a hit if I, line it up properly. Whereas if I start Rapid Shot, I could hit one, maybe two, miss one, and I feel like it's just like a waste of a skill. And then obviously you pick Rain of Arrows and Poison Shot because they're the best, pretty much like the best AoE bow skills in the game. So you drop them on point, on OPR, or in wars, and they just do a ton of damage. Pretty self-explanatory. And then since we're going to want to do more damage, we pick Concussion, which whenever you land a headshot, deal 20% more damage. And you have a chance to get your arrow back, which is pretty good. Even though in OPR you don't really consume your arrows, but in war, when you buy those specific arrows that are in the shop, having a 50% chance to get that arrow back is pretty good. So just like how I prefaced in the beginning of the build, and you'll see it in the gameplay, I like to play like a mid-range spot with the bow. And playing in a mid-range spot, the playstyle is different than like something with a musket where you're on the other side of the map just trying to snipe single people out. You're going to be focused on trying to do as much AoE damage and also be really aware of your surroundings, because you can get dove. You're in a spot where you could potentially get charged, dove, grav weld by a bunch of axes because you're in a mid-range spot. They can spot you out and they can find you and dive you. So you need to understand, when to pull out the Rapier, when to disengage, when to move back, move forward with your team, and have good communication. It's actually like a really enjoyable weapon to play with, right? I actually really like using the bow because it keeps you active in the game at all times. Like, I've noticed that like stuff like the Rapier and the bow and even the like spear, they keep you pretty proactive and like in spatial awareness and stuff like that, because you need to understand where you are in comparison to everyone else, because you can just get dove by a great axe and get destroyed in 3 hits, especially if you're in light. So knowing where everyone is, where you are, your team, and all that stuff is really important. And as far as like how to use your skills and all these side perks that we're going to get to in a second, you just kind of just want to aim at the clump. When you see like a clump of people fighting, drop your Poison Shot, drop your Rain of Arrows, and then just try to Penetrating Shot the backline mages and healers in the back, because if you land a headshot Penetrating Shot, you're going to hit them for like 4 or 5k, and you could potentially kill them if they're like in light. you might be able to just one-shot someone in the back line. All right, so now that we talked about the skills and a little bit of the playstyle with these skills, let's talk a little bit about these side perks. And there are a lot of side perks that you pick up, like evasive tactics, which basically lets you do more damage. Most of these perks are just to deal more damage and be able to consistently deal that damage, right? So after dodge rolling, deal 20% damage, right? Hitting a foe below 50% allows you to get all bow cooldowns by 5%, so you can be doing more damage with your bow abilities. Deal 20% more damage to foes of at least 10 meters away, so you want to keep that in mind as well when playing your distance. But 10 meters is not a lot. 10 meters is a relatively short distance for a ranged weapon, right? Then heavy attack arrows fly faster and deal 30% more damage, so you kind of want to really load up the arrow and then hit them, right? Because getting to 30% more damage on a fully loaded arrow is good, but you need to know when you can and cannot fully charge an arrow, right? If you see someone barreling at you and you want to get an extra shot in, you cannot fully charge it. You hit a quick shot, switch to your rapier, roll out of there. Finishing shot, deal 20% more damage to targets below 50% health. Pretty self-explanatory. When you see someone low, to finish them off, basically like an execute, you get 20% more damage. Focus them down, obviously. And if you stack that with like aim true, you're hitting them for like 50% more damage basically at that point. So you're dealing a hell of a lot of damage to someone when they're already low, so you could probably just, like I said, execute them. Another thing is like unbreakable focus. It's really good because you're going to be pretty close, so you will be getting hit with like stray ranged weapon skills like mage skills and fire skills, and being able to receive 10% less damage while ADSing is really good to keep you in the fight and alive. Arrow range, increase the distance where arrows travel before they hit with gravity. I think that's pretty simple. You want your arrows to go as straight as possible, so you don't have to worry about like arcing it or anything. And if you're playing a mid-range game, arrow range is perfect because you're basically always just going to be able to aim wherever you want to aim, and the arrow will just hit because the distance from you to the person won't be more than like 15 to 20 meters. So the arrow range buff to the distance is great. Another thing, Hawkeye, when you land a headshot, heal yourself for 10% of the damage done. It's really good. Keep yourself sustaining into the fight. And Bullseye, increase crit chance on bow shots by 10%. You always want to try to land as many crits as possible. So to have a crit chance increaser, fantastic. All right, so that basically covers the build and what I think more importantly, the playstyle, because the bow is a pretty different ranged weapon in comparison to the other ranged weapons in the game. You are playing like a mid-range in the fight type of weapon. You know, you have the ability to get dove, so you need to be more aware and stuff like that. But with all that being said, let's hit tab and let's talk about the armor, which I actually don't even have on. I don't even have the bow on currently. Kind of funny. I was in a war and I was a Great Axe Hammer swing group, so I have full void pin on and Great Axe Hammer. But ignoring this, you're basically going to run a bow with obviously a diamond. I'm pretty sure it's a diamond. Yeah, 15% more damage. And algo healing while at full health. You aren't going to be getting hit as much as most people in the melee range. So having 15% more damage is huge. You should always have a diamond in your bow, 100%. And then secondary is a rapier. So this is where the conversation gets a little interesting in armor. You can go one of two things. You can go medium or you can go full light. And personally, I'm going medium because it's the armor that I have. And I kind of like the option to have an extra dodge if I do need to dodge in the situation where someone is diving me. And I think the mitigating damage that medium gives you and the more armor in comparison to the bit of damage buff that light gives you is worth it. Don't get me wrong. If you want to run full light, it's perfectly viable. Light or medium is really good with the bow. I'm leaning more towards medium because I like the extra armor in case I need to take a range battle with somebody. I might win that exchange because I'm mitigating more damage than they're getting from their light buff, if you know what I'm saying. So I like medium. Light is an option. If you're going light, you probably have to go to like custom armors. The good thing about the Void Vent set is that it's completely dex the medium, which is great for the bow already. So I was like, oh, this is perfect for the bow and the rapier, medium dex armor. I won't have that extra bonus base damage from running light, but it's still great because it's still full dex and it's actually like perfectly statted because it's 600 gear score. All right, but yeah, that's pretty much the armor. Let's get into the next thing, and that is the attributes. And my attributes are completely wrong because again, I was running a strength build in a war. But basically, you're gonna want to run like full dex, and if you're running light, you're basically just going all in on dex. because you might hit 50 con maybe if you want to get like the ability for health consumables to be 20% stronger, which might be good for you to run just so you can get like a pot that heals 20% more. But pretty much all of it's dex. Me personally, I try to hit like 360 dex, something like that, and then I try to hit 100 con, just because I want because I'm running medium, I want the 10% increase of physical armor as health, which I think is pretty good. So I basically have the exact same build that I had in my rapier video. For those who haven't seen that one, go check it out. It's pretty good. All right, so that pretty much covers everything that I want to talk about in the video. We're gonna hit escape, and we're gonna go back to the full screen so I can wrap this bad boy up. All right, so that pretty much covers everything. Thank you guys for all the love and support you've been showing on all the recent content. Sorry that I haven't been able to stream a lot recently. My net has been bugging out. I've had terrible upload, so I've been trying to like make as much YouTube content as I can to still like be releasing stuff for you guys. But as soon as my net is better, I will be streaming again daily. All right, so I don't want to drag this on too long. Peace out, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which is probably gonna be the musket. Actually, it might be the life staff. It might be life staff, guys. All right.
Like, ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me.